A helicopter takes off from Lago Ranco, Chile, but minutes later it crashes into the water. Sebastian Piñera, the former president of Chile, is the only fatal victim. But what were the events for this outcome? This video is based on reports from witnesses and official sources. February 6, 2024. The former president of Chile, Sebastian Piñera, makes a morning trip from his own house located in Coique Bay to the house of Jose Cox, an old friend known from the university. Jose Cox lives on the other side of the lake, about 12 miles away. The flight should take 8 minutes. With Piñera is his sister Magdalena Piñera, his friend and businessman Ignacio Guerrero, and his son Bautista Guerrero. The objective is to have lunch together and then return home in the afternoon. To do this, they use a popular helicopter, the Robinson R44. Sebastian is 74 years old and has been the owner of this aircraft since 2006. The tail number is CCPHP. He's a man who undergoes constant training to fly better. He has 20 years of experience and even used to ask for the pilot seat to fly when he was president. His friends describe him as a good pilot, although a bit daring. In 2007, he was fined for landing the helicopter outside the stadium on the island of Chiloé without permission. In 2010, he made a rough landing and crashed into a tree with the tail of the helicopter as a strong wind hit him with no warning. The incident occurred precisely in Lago Ranco. And in 2011, he had to make an emergency landing on a highway because of a bad flight plan and ran out of fuel. As for the helicopter, the R44 has 4 seats and is powered by a Lycoming IO540 engine. With its 6 cylinders and 8.9 liters of displacement, it provides 252 horsepower. The engine is very reliable and popular for powering all kinds of aircraft. In the Robinson, the engine can accelerate the chopper up to 150 miles per hour and elevate it to 14,000 feet or 4,300 meters above sea level. Lago Ranco is located at 200 feet or 70 meters above sea level, so it's not an obstacle for the Robinson. Finally, the aircraft with its 4 occupants takes off on the cloudy day and flies to Cox's house without any mishap. When they finish lunch at 2:30 p.m., the rains intensify, and Cox and his wife suggest that they should stay and wait for the weather to improve. But Piñera is tired and wants to go to his house to rest. Furthermore, the rain and wind were not so intense as to make the aircraft difficult to fly. All the passengers board, and the aircraft prepares to take off. In almost all helicopters, the pilot sits on the right because it's more comfortable to operate the controls. Once in the air and heading towards his house, the aircraft suddenly stops and begins to make a turn to return to Cox's house. But moments later, no more than 1,300 feet or 400 meters from takeoff, the aircraft loses altitude and falls on the pilot's side. Cox's wife sees what happened and alerts her husband. He immediately takes his boat to come to the rescue. The 3 passengers manage to get out of the helicopter, but former President Piñera cannot remove his seatbelt in time and goes down with the aircraft. According to Ignacio Guerrero, who was traveling at the front, he said that shortly after taking off, a vent was open, which caused the entire windshield to fog up. Given the low visibility, Piñera decides to return to Cox's house to land and defog the glass safely. But when turning around, Piñera disorients and tilts the aircraft dangerously, which causes a loss of altitude. Without knowing it, they suddenly collide with the water. Piñera immediately shouts for them to abandon ship as he shuts off the engine and holds the stick to the side, keeping the left doors clear of water and preventing the helicopter from crushing or cutting them with the propeller. The young man and the woman manage to get out, while the front passenger, now with the door open, tries to help Piñera, but the seatbelt is impossible to release, and the aircraft sinks first, dragging the former president. His body would be found hours later, but outside and next to the helicopter at 90 feet or 28 meters deep. The diver who went to look for him commented that he was very easy to rescue and that he was not tied to anything. The autopsy of the body would later reveal that Piñera died from drowning. It is believed that after removing his seatbelt while submerged, he couldn't open the door because the water on the other side exerted a lot of pressure until the helicopter was 100% flooded, and by the time he did, he was already too deep and the air was not enough to reach the surface. The aircraft was analyzed underwater in search of items of interest and other details, and was then removed and covered with a black blanket to preserve it. Later, it was transported to the Chilean capital for the final expert opinion. The helicopter, since it's for private use, is not required to carry a flight recorder. However, investigators are almost certain that, due to the rain and the open vent, the windshield fogged up very quickly, blocking the pilot's visibility. This then led to spatial disorientation and caused Piñera to tilt the helicopter and finally crash. According to the passengers, the engine worked correctly and the pilot never complained of a lack of power. Spatial disorientation is a phenomenon that occurs very often and happens when the pilot has no visual reference of the terrain. He then trusts his own sensations and equilibrium located in his ear to decide whether the aircraft is upright or inclined. The problem is that when shaken by turbulence or sharp turns, the ear sends false signals to the brain and the pilot becomes confused, believing that the helicopter is tilted when in reality it's upright, wrongly causing the pilot to destabilize the ship. Pilots undergo intense training to ignore their equilibrium and rely solely on the instruments, but sometimes the reflex action is faster and stronger, especially when they're at low altitude and there's no time. The spatial disorientation of pilots has already produced many accidents. Owner of one of the largest fortunes in Chile, Piñera governed for 2 non-consecutive terms from 2010 to 2014 and again from 2018 to 2022. Managing the reconstruction of the country after the devastating earthquake of 2010, the epic rescue of the 33 miners, the successful vaccination campaign during the pandemic, and the social outbreak of 2019. The president received a state funeral with the Chilean flag on the coffin. In the next video, we're going to show you how an Argentine submarine enters British maritime space near the Falkland Islands and encounters a nuclear submarine. Then, it disappears after declaring an emergency. Was it really hunted for entering wrong territory? Or simply several failures due to poor maintenance inside the submarine led to a catastrophe? All this happened in 2017 with the U-boat Ara San Juan. Or also, in 2019, how a military training plane takes off and loses its windshield in a test flight, causing the co-pilot to eject. If not, we're also preparing the Falkland submarine battle during the 1982 war and the last torpedo shot occurred. This channel is True Events in 3D, where we tell real stories and animate them. Don't forget to leave your like to support the video and subscribe for more content. Share the video with your friends, leave a comment, and we'll see you in the next video.